Welcome to the LEA Private Nonprofit Equitable Services Random Validation Training. For the PNP Random Validation, TEA will request documentation for one selected program requirement. However, a district must ensure it has documentation on file for all PNP program requirements. This section will provide a brief overview of the LEA PNP Equitable Services Program purpose and the indicator that will be validated. This presentation is intended solely to provide general information and guidance to Texas ESCs, LEAs, and participating private schools, and reflects the Texas Education Agency's current understanding of statute and applicable federal guidance. The content of this presentation is subject to change as a result of further potential information and guidance provided by federal agencies with regulatory oversight of these programs. This presentation does not constitute legal advice, and entities are, therefore, advised to seek legal counsel regarding the information and guidance provided in this presentation before acting on such information and guidance. Documenting overall compliance for a program requirement may require several forms of documentation to be maintained locally and available upon request by TEA and/or an auditor. To ensure overall compliance with program requirements, LEAs should refer to the program guide and/or other program-related resources that reference the multiple forms of documentation required to be maintained locally. The documentation requested for submission during the random validation process may not include all forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. Given the increased use of virtual meeting environments, participant rosters that include the meeting title, meeting date, and stakeholder names and roles would be acceptable substitutes for the more traditional sign-in sheets. This eliminates the need of a participant signature. LEAs should review the Random Validation Handbook for each validation requirement. LEAs will complete applicable sections, include relevant documentation, and follow the Random Validation Handbook instructions to submit documentation through the Federal Program Compliance Division's Work app by the due date. The ESA Section 1117 provides the statutory requirements for the Title I Part A program. The LEA must maintain inventory control of PNP purchases for equitable services. The LEA must keep control of all funds titled to materials, equipment, and property purchased for equitable services. The ESA Section 8501 provides the statutory requirements and the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 34, Section 299.9. Citation references for Title 8 programs. Title 8 programs include Title 2 Part A, Title 3 Part A, Title 4 Part A, and Title 4 Part B. The statute LEAs must keep control of funds in the Title II, all purchases for PNP Equitable Services. Program-specific provisions and assurances relating to the Title I Part A PNP requirement, maintaining inventory control of PNP purchases for equitable services state. The control of Title I Part A funds and Title II materials, equipment, and property purchased with such funds shall be in a public agency, and a public agency shall administer such funds, materials, equipment, and property. Assurances relating to the Title VIII PNP program Services may be found in the ESA Consolidated Federal Grant Application. The Title VIII program refers to Sections 8501 through 8504. You may click the link to learn more about the Title VIII program-specific provisions and assurances. On the 21-22 LEA Compliance Report, one of the LEA program compliance self-check indicators are for the LEA to maintain inventory control of purchase for PNP Equitable Services. On the ESA Consolidated Federal Grant Application, the LEA must keep procedures to maintain and control the PNP's technology, equipment, and supplies purchased for Equitable Services programs. LEAs are required to submit specific documentation that provides evidence of LEA internal control policies and procedures were in place. Acceptable evidence could include a copy of written policies and procedures regarding purchases of PNP technology, equipment, and supplies for Equitable Services, and one sample of dated agendas, consultation notes, and/or other documentation specifying LEA maintains control of the PNP Equitable Services purchases and the inventory list of items purchased for PNP Equitable Services on one private school campus for each participating ESA program. With this particular requirement, the LEA is required to submit these 3 bullets of documentation to support it maintained inventory control of PNP purchases. Documentation required to ensure that the LEA maintained inventory control of purchases for Equitable Services includes written documentation to support the LEA internal control policies and procedures. Issues that may result in an improvement needed status are the auditable documentation requested was not submitted, documentation submitted does not reference each of the 3 requested PNP validation requirements, or the documentation from a prior year was submitted instead of current year documentation. Thank you for attending the session. If there are any questions following this training, feel free to call or send an email to Lenitra Guess, PNP Ombudsman and Title IV Part A Program Director, or reach out to your local ESC. Thank you and have a wonderful day.